Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Kaplan. I'm editor of The Banker magazine. And welcome to the Banker's Leadership Series in association with Royal Bank of Scotland. The title of today's discussion is Making Payments Simple. And we're going to be looking at how innovation and ingenuity can make sense of a fast-changing world and shifting payments landscape. We have an excellent panel for you, so now let the panel introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Lawrence Layden and I'm Head of Financial Services Industries for SAP in EMEA.
Hello, I'm Mike Jones. I'm responsible for financial innovations for PayPal in Europe, Middle East and Africa.
Hello, my name is Neil Livingston. I'm the Global Head of Transaction Services Origination at Royal Bank of Scotland in the International Banking Division.
Well, clearly we live in challenging economic times. And I'm sure we'll be talking about some of the difficulties that we face in the world economy. But Neil, I mean, perhaps we could try and start with some optimistic aspects of things that are going on. And, I mean, people are excited in the payments area, people are excited about the renminbi. There's talk of a US recovery and, there's still growth in the BRIC economies. What's keeping you motivated?
So great question, Brian. Thank you. And so certainly there are some things to be positive about, and no doubt a number of things that we could be quite pessimistic about. But let me start maybe by suggesting that we are, I think, in a period of extreme and heightened change and uncertainty. And so you'll hear a lot of talk about agility and the ability to plan your business, the ability to look forward into the future. And I think this is the premium now that all businesses are facing is how do you plan for that future given the uncertainties that we face. And there are so many contradictory signals. If you look at the payments industry in particular, we've got some parts of the payment industry which are growing 60, 70, 80% compound, and other parts that are essentially intrinsically tied to GDP growth, which we all know in certainly the developed and Western world is struggling. So it really depends which segment you look at, what type of payment flows, which geographies. Clearly the BRIC countries, and in particular I would single out in this context Brazil, maybe to a second degree Russia, have possibly stepped aside from the rest of the pack. And we are seeing real step change in how those economies operate, and it clearly is coming through in the payments landscape. So some good news, some things to be positive about, but a massive amount of challenge and uncertainty and inability really to predict the future.
Okay, Mike, I mean, if I ask the question the other way around, which is, what keeps you awake at night? What would you say? What are the things that you're most worried about in terms of the current economic environment?
Well, I think that there's, as a company who are involved in emerging payments and the e-commerce space predominantly, and with a very focused agenda on moving into the multi-channel space, PayPal is thinking very hard about how we can be much more relevant to our customers in the way that we can add value and the way that we can steer away from being a commodity, because payments is very much a commoditized business in a lot of areas.
But I mean, does the sluggish economic growth in the Eurozone worry you or not? I mean, it's an interesting question because obviously in the World Payments Report that just came out, non-cash payments are growing, and they're even growing way ahead of GDP in the developed economies. And then if you look to the emerging markets, they're growing sort of 30% year on year. So, I mean, can you read the newspapers, see all these negative headlines and just think, well, that doesn't really affect me?
I think that, well, in terms of our growth, I mean, we're still growing at very high rates. We still have a very significant international business, which is now outstripping our domestic market, which is North America. And we are expanding into other markets and other segments. So yes, we are seeing growth is in line with our forecasting. In certain areas, we're still beating those forecasts. So I'd say yes, we aren't impacted in quite the same way as the high street would be, and there's still a lot of opportunity for people who are prepared to innovate and do new things.
Okay, well, let's get Lawrence's view on that. So is the glass half full or half empty? I mean, this recession's been going on sort of 4 years now, doesn't it? It's the new normal, really.
I mean, I think from our perspective, we see very much almost a tipping point, I think, in a way a lot of these organizations are treating the economic downturn. Some of them seen as an advantage to maybe look at their systems, to streamline, to understand from a customer perspective how they can maybe steal a march on others. And I think others are really sort of digging in and trying to survive. From our perspective, I think what is certain is that things aren't going to go back to the way they were before. So I think those companies and banks and customers that think it will, I think have got quite a shake-up coming. I think the traditional ways that people transact with banks is very much under scrutiny now, and customers probably want a different relationship with their banks. So from that perspective, there's a lot of change coming, and I think it's almost like a revolution that other industries have gone through, and I think there's more change coming at a faster rate. So the change will be the norm, like it is in many other industries, unlike a small blip that some people may think this is.